Hi guys, you're welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Yvonne Princess Shabangu. If you are new here, you're welcome to like, subscribe, share, and comment. And voila, you're part of the graceful, the beautiful, and the wonderful family. We are back with another video, and today we're shooting a book review. Booked and busy. I get to reading, guys. So in the past month, I was reading this book, the subtitle of Not Giving a because I don't want YouTube to block me. But this is one of the most life-changing books. It's very funny, it's very informative, and it's very impactful, and it's such a realistic book. So yeah, tune in. If you've read this book before, I'm sure you can agree with me. If you haven't, I know there's some people, I almost put it away, right? Because of how there's so much vulgar in the beginning of the book, because obviously I'm that type of sensitive person. So I almost put it away, but something told me to keep on going. Little did I know that, what, myself is going to be changed. My eyes are going to be opened. My perspective is going to be broadened, right? So, yeah. This is just an amazing book. We're gonna go into it. I'm gonna share my insights and my favorite chapters, guys. My favorite chapters of this book are the last 4 chapters, which is basically it's up to chapter 9. So from chapter 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9, yeah, the last 5 or 4 chapters I thoroughly enjoyed myself. So before I go into my own personal perspectives and what I learned, I'm gonna go into a paragraph that actually stole my heart at the back of the book. It's the second paragraph. It says, Manson makes the argument that human beings are flawed and limited. As he writes, not everybody can be extraordinary. There are winners and there are losers in society, and some of it is not fair or your fault. It's not your fault and it's not fair. Manson advises us to get to know our limitations and accept them. This, he says, is the real source of empowerment. Once we embrace our fears, our faults, and our uncertainties, once we stop running from and avoiding and start confronting painful truths, we can begin to find the courage and the confidence we desperately seek. So it's all in acceptance. So the moment you accept yourself for what you are and who you really are, then you get to learn that you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to succumb to culture. You don't have to make sense to me or the next person. You just have to be yourself. You just have to be honest and open and vulnerable with yourself, And also I love that he reflects a lot how a lot of things start with you internally, but it's unfortunate that we've let societal standards and a lot of social media consumption that we do affect how we think and affect how we relate with other people and affect how we actually view certain things in life, right? So I'm gonna go into it. I'm not gonna start with my favorite chapters. I'm gonna start like at the beginning. You guys know how I read. Like I could never borrow anyone my books because look at them. This is how they are all the time, right? Because I try and tag all the things that are very meaningful and very important in that moment to me. So when we started chapter 1, one thing that I appreciate about this book, right, like I said, acceptance. So we're in chapter 1, right? Acceptance. He titled it Don't Try, and he's so funny and hilarious because when you read Don't Try, you're thinking basically I must just be a lousy couch potato, but that's not what he's saying. Don't try too hard to be something that you're not. Just accept who you are. And it's so funny, maybe God is also teaching me about acceptance in this season, because it's so funny. I've been watching a lot of podcasts and reading a lot on acceptance. There's a podcast I was watching by Mpumi and Queen Finesse. Is it Queen Finesse? If I'm wrong, guys, you'll correct me, right? But there's a part where she said she became successful just by being herself. God creates certain blessings for you because you are yourself, but you will miss those blessings because you're trying to be somebody else. So it's important that you're accepting of who you are. That's your starting point. And then he says, he knew it, and his success stemmed from some determination to be a winner, but from the fact that he knew he was a loser and accepted it, and then wrote honestly about it. He never tried to be anything other than what he was. It's important to accept where you are, what you're doing, and what you're going through. If you're in pain, carry that pain, be accepting of it, so that you are able to deal with it. Like in this chapter, I was talking about this guy who became one of the best writers. But firstly, he started by accepting that he was such a bad writer at the time, and then he wrote about how bad he was. He wrote about how much of a loser he was. But all of that was helping him accept who he was, right? And then it was his simple ability to be completely unflinchingly honest with himself, especially the worst part of himself, to share his failings without hesitation or doubt. Many other times we hide our flaws, we hide our scars, we hide our pains and stuff like that, but we don't realize that we are actually stunting our growth. We're actually stunting our ability to meet the best version of ourselves, right? So it's always important that you can lie to the world, you can hide yourself from the world, but be honest with yourself. Sit down with yourself and ask yourself, what am I doing wrong? And why am I doing the things that I'm doing? Why am I saying the things that I'm saying? Why am I feeling the way I'm feeling? It helps, guys. I promise you, it changes you so much when you start being honest with yourself. When you are a reflective human being and you're honest with yourself, you actually appreciate life more and you're able to exercise gratitude. I was in conversation with one of my friends, and then I was telling her how, when I finally fulfilled all the requirements of becoming an admitted attorney, it was a crazy full circle moment for me, because from my final year, I felt like it's like the world has been against me becoming an attorney. It's like in my final year, I was not well. I almost dropped out. And then it was so hard for me to get articles. And then during articles, at some point, I wanted to quit. And then board exams were so hard. And all of those things, And when I sat down and reflected, I was like, God, you are faithful. So she was saying to me, it's so amazing how much of a reflective person you are. The way you narrate your journey from year 2019 to 2023. Some people just congratulate themselves and keep it moving. I say to her, it's important for me to sit down and be honest about this journey, to sit down and reflect on this journey, because it's a turning point of my life. Sometimes many journeys are turning points of our lives, but we are not able to appreciate them, comprehend them, or recognize them, because we are not honest during that journey. We are not honest that, okay, at some point I wanted to quit. At some point it was so hard for me. At some point I was depressed. At some point I was sad. Exercise honesty with yourself. At least you can fool everybody else, but be honest with yourself, And then and then he goes on to say self-improvement and success often occur together, but that doesn't necessarily mean they are the same thing. So you can self-improve and not be successful, right? You can be successful and not be an improved human being. It's so crazy how we use weird standards to measure ourselves. Just because I'm great at a certain thing, I feel like I'm overall a successful human being or overall a good person. But it's not always the case. Most of these things you have to deliberately and intentionally work through them, You don't just miraculously become successful or miraculously improve. Improvement and development actually take time, They take you putting in the hours, they take you showing up, they take tears, they take pain, they take critics. You cannot self-improve without pain. You cannot self-improve without uncomfortability. You cannot self-improve without critiques. You cannot self-improve without actually looking at your ugly self. For you to be able to change yourself or become better, you need to look at your worst parts and your ugliest parts and be able to actually acknowledge those parts. If it's parts that are fixable, you can only fix what you acknowledge. You can only fix what you know. You can't fix what you don't know. So, and then he goes on. I love also what he teaches in chapter 1, where there's a part where he says, our society today, through wonders of consumer culture, and hey, look at my life is cooler than your social media, has bred a whole generation of people who believe that having negative experiences such as anxiety, fear, guilt, and etc. is totally not okay. He says it's okay to feel sad, it's okay to be anxious, it's okay to be in doubt. All of those emotions are valid and they are okay. You are supposed to be sad when when something happens that makes you sad. You are supposed to be anxious when something bigger than you is going to happen. You are supposed to doubt yourself. Those are emotions that are valid. Those are emotions that are part of human existence. You can't cover all of those emotions with positivity or happiness or joy or all of that, right? It's important that you feel those feelings, because What happens is, if you don't feel those feelings, if you don't acknowledge them, they'll haunt you, and they impact how you relate with the world, and they impact how you experience life. But when you actually confront them, when you actually face them, to say, actually, I'm sad, I need to cry right now, and you cry, you'd realize tomorrow you won't need to cry because you've cried about it today, and tomorrow you won't wake up bitter because you've understood, you felt the emotion, and you validated it. But don't ignore feelings, guys. Do not ignore, actually, maybe feelings, but do not ignore emotions. Feel your emotions. Feel your emotions. One thing about me, I'll be sad. Listen, if I'm sad, I'm sad. If I'm angry, I'm angry. If I'm happy, I'm happy. I do not disqualify any feeling that I feel. It's important that you do not disqualify your emotion. You have every right to be sad. Also, it's important that you understand why you're feeling a certain way. It's important that you understand why you got to that point. Okay, I'm upset about this. What is it about this situation that's making me upset? What is it about this situation that is making me angry? So it's important that your feelings are acknowledged. It's important that you, actually, not anybody else must acknowledge your feelings. They can, I mean, but the world doesn't owe you that. You owe yourself to acknowledge your feelings. You owe yourself to validate every feeling that you feel. Do not dismiss it or ignore it, because it's going to give you problems. It's going to make you feel like life is miserable, and that time life is good, mate. And then also he talks about life being a form of suffering, right? And then, oh guys, I hope I'm able to like share everything I want to share. And then he says one of those realizations was that life itself is a form of suffering. The rich suffer because of their riches. The poor suffer because of their poverty. People without a family suffer because they have no family. People with a family suffer because of their family drama. People who pursue worldly pleasures suffer because of their worldly pleasures. People who abstain from worldly pleasures suffer because of their abstention, right? This isn't to say all suffering is equal. Some suffering is certainly more painful than the other suffering, but we all must suffer nonetheless. You know what, we think, a lot of the times people think a good life, a peaceful life or a joyful life is a life without troubles, is a life without trials, is a life without tribulations, is a life without inconveniences, inconsistencies. But listen, you cannot live a life that is full if you don't experience that form of pain, that form of suffering, that form of feeling down, that form of feeling out, and feeling like you're alone. It's important that you feel those feelings. It's important that you go through those things. And sometimes we're quick to say, oh no, you should be grateful, but you're rich. You should be grateful you went to school. Yes, I am grateful, but do not think that education that I got comes easy. Oh, you should be grateful that you're a lawyer, you're an attorney. Yes, I'm grateful, but there's a pain that I had to endure. There's a pain or a form of suffering that I had to go through. And you can't invalidate that because you feel like your pain is more valid or your pain is more strong, whatever the case may be. It's important that we acknowledge it. We all suffer one way or another, though we will suffer at different levels or different degrees of suffering. But everything we go through, it invites a form of suffering or a form of pain. There's let me make an example, right? We all want to be in joyful, happy relationships, right? But the moment you open yourself to that, you invite a form of suffering. You're not supposed to avoid it or ignore it. And I say this, you invite a form of suffering because this is you getting to know a person, a new person, a person that you don't know whether or not they're gonna decide to marry you, whether or not they're genuine, whether or not they're honest, whether or not they like you, or whether or not they're going to be in your life for the rest of life. So you open up a form of pain. You open up a form of pain in that also you may love that person, but they may not love you equally. You open yourself up to a form of pain because they may leave you, or they may spend the rest of their lives with you and cause you some disappointments along the way. So it's important that we acknowledge that at some point, whatever choice we make, because sometimes we don't want to make choices or decisions because we think, oh my God, this is painful, oh my God, I'm going to suffer. But whatever choice you make, whether it's a good one or it's a bad one, there's a form of suffering. You decide which suffering you want to endure. If you want to enjoy a suffering of, I did something great, it doesn't matter whether I'm in pain or not, or you want to enjoy suffering of, I'm going to be a thief, I'm going to be this or that, and then I'm going to end up in jail. It's entirely up to you, but either way, you're always making a choice, and that choice always is a form of suffering, And then another part that actually took me away in chapter 1, there's a premise that underlies a lot of us, a lot of our assumptions and belief. The premise is that happiness is algorithmic, that it can be worked for and earned and achieved as if it were getting accepted to law school or building a really complicated Lego set. If I achieve X, then I become happy. If I look like Y, then I become happy. If I can be with a person like Z, then I become happy. This premise, though, is the problem. And I noted, And I say it's a problem because, and I say this is a problem because if you look at it, right, if you're constantly looking for things or attaching your happiness to things, to people, to places, when all of those things are removed, you remain unhappy. And also those things are short-term happiness. Genuine long-term happiness is internal. It's from the values you set, the principles you set for yourself. It's from how your character, how you build your character. Those are the things that you can look up and be like, you know what, this makes me happy. You know, this is who I am. My values, you know, make me happy. My principles make me happy. But if you look at things like, okay, once I make a meal, I'm going to be happy. Yeah, you're going to be happy. But that's short term. It's going to be short-lived. You're not going to be happy for a very long time. You know, do not attach your happiness to things and places and people. Learn to figure yourself out. Learn to know yourself. Find out what makes you happy. That is not materialistics or something that you don't have to have an expectation that a certain human being must be the one to fulfill that happiness, you know. And then, okay, I'm gonna skip chapter 2 and then I love this chapter, but I'm not gonna go into it, guys, because I need you guys to read purchase this book. It's an amazing book. In chapter 3, he says that you're not special. I'm not going to go into anything that I highlighted quite a lot, but it took me back to one of the conversations that I had with one of my previous bosses. And you know, when he said it, I was hurt. He said to me, so we're in conversation, right, was asking me, like, you know, I had done a mistake, so he was basically reprimanding me. So then he was saying, you know, this is a sloppy mistake because I know this is a sloppy mistake because I know that you can do better. I know that you're amazing. I know that you're intelligent. And then he sat me down and he said, I need you to understand that if you're going to go up the ranks in this corporate space, you need to understand that you're not special, you know. And when he said that, I was like, oops, that hurts. You know, I even cried. I remember that day I cried because I was like, what do you mean? You say I'm intelligent, I'm smart, I'm talented, and you say I'm not special? What do you even mean about that, right? And then when I read this chapter, you are not special, I got it. It was like an aha moment. So Mark actually speaks on how we need to start understanding that our problems are not unique to us. You know, what we go through in life is not unique to us. We may not go through it the same way, but trust me, whatever that you're going through, somebody has gone through. Whatever that you want or desire, somebody has achieved. And which is why it's important to not treat yourself as a victim or put yourself in a box where you think your circumstances are too special. Put yourself in a position whereby you understand that somebody has gone through that and you can and you will, you know. So when you start thinking that you're too special, you start walking around with a sense of entitlement, because also when you think you're special, you think people must treat you a certain way. And once you think people must treat you a certain way, you start carrying yourself a certain way. And when people don't treat you that way, you actually trip or you react. And usually the reaction is negative, and you start feeling like people don't get you, people don't understand you and all of that. But it all started with you. Don't walk around thinking you're special. Don't do it. It hurts. And that's also hearing people say, no, there's nothing so special about you and all of that. It really does hurt. But yeah, you know, and then, yeah, you know, and then also there's something that I want to share, right? And I love this because I love how Amanda Dambuza narrated it at the Unlimited first, right? So he says, it has become an accepted part of our culture today to believe that we are all destined to do something truly extraordinary. It says it has become an accepted part of our culture to believe that we are all destined to do something truly extraordinary. Celebrities say it, business tycoons say it, politicians say it, even opera says it, so it must be true. Each and every one of us can be extraordinary. We all deserve greatness. This is a lie, a blatant lie, you know. And I remember how Amanda Dambuza said it, that however you receive it, whether it's unfortunate or fortunate for you, but it's important to understand that not everybody is going to be great. That's just how life is. You become great because of what you put out or what you put in. You become great because of how seriously you take yourself. You become great via your decision making. You become great via how you show up for yourself, how you show up for other people, your work ethic. You become great via those things, who you're connected to, who you know, the type of relationships you have. It's a whole bunch of a ball. But you don't just become great because somebody has said you're going to be great, or you don't become great because you're entitled to it, or you feel like you deserve to be great. I don't even want to say you earn it, because sometimes people are great but they didn't earn it, they didn't deserve it. So it's like a work that you put in, and who connects to you, and who you are linked to, and all of that. So which is why it's important to be an all-rounded human being, a wholesome human being, who's actually able to have good relationships, good characteristics, who's able to have good principles, good values. And also he discusses what you can look at as good values. And because I'm not going to go deep into it, but he mentions things like honesty. Honesty is a very good value, because you are not saying, I want to be like maybe a model that you see on Instagram. You're saying, I want to be honest. That thing carries you for the rest of your life, because in every decision you make, you are going to be honest with yourself, you are going to be honest with other people. So he talks about how you can make values, that are life-changing, long-lasting, that are part of you. Small, tangible values that actually change your life in a way that you can't imagine. Many other times you can think, okay, why would a person tell me that I should be honest? But you look at yourself, first, if you're honest with yourself about who you are, you start knowing what to say yes to, what to say no to. You start knowing what to accept, what to acknowledge, and what not to. You see, already honesty alters a very big part of our lives, but we don't recognize. We constantly think greatness is hidden in big things, in money, I mean, you can find greatness here and there in materialistic things, but greatness is it's in small things like kindness, compassion, honesty, respect, hard work. It's those type of things that you actually build yourself up all the way to wherever you want to be, and then okay, there's a last one. Chapter 3 was actually very interesting, and then the last part, it says the ticket to emotional health, like that to physical health, comes from eating your veggies. That is, accepting the bland and mundane truths of life. Truths such as your actions actually don't matter that much in the grand scheme of things, and the vast majority of your life will be boring and not worthy, and that's okay. Also, it's important to accept certain things, because I feel like sometimes lack of acceptability makes us do things that we're uncomfortable with, and things that are not even profitable to ourselves, because we're trying so hard to be seen, we're trying so hard to fit in, right? And then he goes on to say, this vegetable course will taste bad at first, very bad. You will avoid accepting it, but once ingested, your body will wake up feeling more potent and more alive. After all, that constant pressure to be something amazing, to be the next big thing, will be lifted off your back. Okay, I mean, if you want to be the next big thing, fine, but that shouldn't be your driving force in life, because here's how you'll say, I want to be the biggest YouTuber. It's okay to dream, it's okay to set goals, but your work ethic shouldn't be centered around just wanting to be the biggest YouTuber, because you will be the big YouTuber, you will get the numbers, and then what? Then you become empty again. You should center yourself surrounding, around okay, I want to be a big YouTuber, but in the grander scheme of things, I want to impact lives, I want to change lives, I want to make people aware of their rights, I want to make people know God more, I want to make people know themselves more, So it's very, very, very important that you understand that you don't have to be this big amazing thing, and that's a very subjective thing. Just because I think being the greatest YouTuber or having numbers on Instagram is the big amazing thing, it doesn't have to be that for you. Your big amazing thing could be taking a walk at the park with your dog. It could be you sitting at home spending quality time with your family. It could be you sharing your most authentic self with one person in the world. It doesn't have to be identical or similar to the next person. You just have to understand that you don't have to be imagine if all there ever was in the world was Michelle Obama and Barack Obama, we wouldn't have variety, we wouldn't learn a lot, we wouldn't experience different individuals or different perspectives. But now, because we're able to be different and be ourselves, we get to learn more, and we get to discover a lot more than we discover when we just feel like, okay, I have to be this big thing. I have to be a celebrity by all means. I have to be, no. Be honest with yourself. And also, I think the worst thing about these things that we want and these things we think we should be, it's not what we really want. It's because of what society puts out there. Everybody must be a lawyer to be seen as a dignified citizen of society. But honestly speaking, you don't have to. You don't have to go through 6 years of studying law or 4 years of studying law simply because you want to fit in. You don't have to. Figure out what you like. Is it art? Is it music? Is it hospitality? Is it medicine? Do what you genuinely love. And I know sometimes pursuing passion can be can be quite tricky, but it's important that your decisions, even if you make compromises and sacrifices, but it's important that your decisions are not based on what you see on Instagram or what you see on TikTok, or basically they're not based on what you see on social media, because people on social media come when they're happier. People on social media come when they are excited. People tell you, I took a social media break because I wasn't okay, because people are never going to post themselves crying. So which is why it's important that you can't look at one photo and believe that, you know what, I have to be like this person. I by fire, by force, I have to get 500,000 subscribers. It'll be good. Trust me, I'd really be happy if I got 500,000 subscribers. But trust me putting this video out there, it's not for 500,000 subscribers. It's for me to impact even one person's life. Even when I get 5 views, I'm happy. I keep it moving. I'm not phased. A lot of people keep on asking me, how do you still stay consistent? Sometimes YouTube, actually not even sometimes, YouTube is hard to grow, especially if you're not selling what's popular, like makeup and beauty and all of that, especially if you're just a person who loves sharing informative things. It's hard to convince people to listen to you. And people ask me, how are you sticking it through? And I say, I'm sticking it through because I'm not doing this for money. I'm not doing this to be seen. I'm not doing this for attention. I'm doing this for a core value that is inside of me, which is to educate, impact, and elevate the next person's life. And because it's for that, I know once I put a video out there, whether there's 10,000 views or not, I'm happy because I've done my purpose. I've done what God has called me to do, And then chapter 4 teaches you a lot on the value of suffering. And there's a lot of important gems there. Like I said, the last 4 or 5 chapters he banked. Like Mark was like, let me serve best for last. And he definitely served us, And then now I just want to go on to the deep parts. So, and then in chapter 4, where he talks about the value of suffering, then he says, denying negative emotions leads to experiencing deeper and more prolonged negative emotions, to emotional dysfunction. It's the same thing I was saying at the beginning of the video, to say it's important that you allow yourself to feel every single emotion, because when you invalidate those emotions, one way or another, you will have to suffer the consequences of invalidating those emotions, and you end up being an emotionally dysfunctional human being, right? And then it goes on to say, constant positivity is a form of avoidance, not a valid solution to life's problems, which, by the way, if you are choosing the right values and metrics, should be invigorating you and motivating you. It's simple. Really, things go wrong. People upset us. Accidents happen. These things make us feel like shit, and that's fine. Sorry. And that's fine. Negative emotions are a necessary component of our emotional health. To deny that negativity is to perpetuate problems rather than to deny that negativity is to perpetuate to deny that negativity is to perpetuate problems rather than solve them. So if you deny those feelings, you're not solving. When you're avoiding, you're not solving. You're actually complicating things and making things worse. And then the trick with negative emotions is that, one, you express them in a socially acceptable and healthy manner. And I think this is why it's very important to always say how you feel and put it up there up front, so that the next person knows where you stand with them, right? And then he says to express them in a way that aligns with your values. Simple example, a value of mine is non-violence. Therefore, when I get mad at anybody, I express that anger, but also I make a point of not punching them in the face. Radical idea, I know, but anger is not a problem. Anger is natural. Anger is part of life. Anger is arguably quite healthy in many situations. Remember, emotions give feedback. So when you feel certain emotions, it shows that you've received what you are being given, and you are sort of giving feedback of how it's making you feel, you know. And yeah, relatable. Like I said earlier, one thing about, I'll be happy, like I'll be excited, I will listen, I'll be excited, I'll laugh, I'll be sad, I'll cry, and equally the same, I'll be very angry, like I will snap. But because I don't believe in violence, I'm definitely not going to throw hands. Like I'm definitely not throwing hands, you know. So yeah, it's important that you establish your values and you establish where you draw the line. And then he goes on to say, yet there are some of the most meaningful moments and joyous things we'll ever do. Yet there are some of the most meaningful moments and joyous things we'll ever do. They involve pain, struggle, even anger and despair. Yet once they are accomplished, we look back and get all the misty-eyed, telling our grandkids about them. As Freud once said, one day in retrospect, the years of struggle will strike you as the most beautiful. And that's the thing. When we go through trials, when we go through pain and suffering and tribulations, in real time, it feels like, oh my God, why do I have to go through this? Why am I enduring all of this? But one thing I can tell you, you always look back and be like, what a beautiful journey. Like if you look at my final day of admission, you look at how I narrate why my admission is a full circle moment for me. And when I was going through certain things, I was in pain, I was hurting, and I didn't understand why. But now when I look at it, I'm like, oh God, thank you, I understand now. It's all beautiful, you know. It's a beautiful story. So yeah, and then we go all the way into chapter 6. We go into chapter 6, right, where he says, you are wrong about everything and so am I. And then he was actually calling me out. I felt like he was dragging me. Listen, he says you need to walk around as a person who knows nothing, so that you are able to receive enough information. Because if you think you're right about anything, it sort of creates this mechanism in your brain that makes it hard for you to receive new information or receive additional information. But the moment you tell yourself and say, you know, I don't know this, you're able to listen to other people, you know. But when you say I'm always right and I know everything, it's harder for you to take in other people's perspectives. And then he says, a certain woman is single and lonely and wants a partner, but she never gets out of the house and does anything about it. A certain man works his ass off and believes he deserves a promotion, but he never explicitly says that to his boss. And then one of the things he says here is like, you know what, we're always quick to assume the end. You assume that you don't have a partner because you're not attractive. You assume that you're gonna spend the rest of your life lonely. But I mean, if you're gonna sit at home and be that, I mean, you know, that's what's going to happen. You assume that your boss is really horrible. You can't approach them for a promotion. You can't ask them for an increase. But that's the thing. You haven't asked them. And you could be wrong. That's the thing. Possibly you're wrong. Because you can't use former precedences or other people's experiences and say, no, my boss will never agree to an increase. My boss will never, ever, ever, ever. Now I'm a living testimony of people that are always seen to be the hard to crack. People that are always seen to say no. Often I find myself getting a yes. And also it's me being able and confident to say, hey, listen, I understand that you don't give people increases, but I need an increase and I can validate that increase, you know. And sometimes you get a no, and that's absolutely okay because you've got nothing to lose, you know. But it's important that you don't make an assumption of your life, because the only certain thing is that we're all going to die. That's the only certain thing. And I love that he also mentions it. He speaks about it in the book that, you know, it's okay to be uncertain, right? But do not let uncertainty be the reason why you don't reach your greatest potential or your greatest abilities. You know, you don't reach your greatest self. You know, it's important that you understand that it's okay to be uncertain. It's okay to be in doubt, but don't avoid those feelings. Feel them, but then move, you know, because literally when it's all said and done, you're not even sure if you're going to wake up tomorrow. The only thing you're sure about is that eventually you're going to die. That's the only thing that you can ever be sure of in life. And I personally, for other people, they may not be sure about this, but personally, 2 things I'm sure about: that Jesus loves me and he lives, right? And then secondly is that I'm going to die at some point, you know. So it's important that you allow those feelings to happen. You allow those feelings to penetrate you, but don't let them consume you, right? I love how he writes. He's such a funny guy. Very, very, very hilarious. You know, yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I want to go through to um or it's in the same chapter still, there's something that he speaks on exception. You know, every time we think I'm exceptional, you think it's only the good parts. You can actually be an exception and be the worst. That's another thing, you know. And I love how he shows us that even when you choose the good choices, even when you make the best decisions, there is a negative connotation to it. But the difference is when you make bad decisions, the negative connotation to it, you probably can't learn from it, and it's probably gonna make you suffer, and it's not worth it. But when you make good choices and there's a negative connotation to it, like for instance, you can decide, okay, let me pursue my articles. Yes, it's gonna be you're gonna be excited, right? You get the job, right? But the negativity of it, and we may not look at it as negative because we're in denial, right? But the negative of it, you won't have time to yourself. You have to spend long hours at the office and all of that. But once you get admitted, you realize that it was all worth it. I've learned enough. I now have a great work ethic. Now I have the freedom to know what I want to do or what I don't want to do. So it's always important to actually know that everything, good or bad, is actually embroidered with negativity at some point, and you get to decide how you react or respond to that negativity. I don't know if you guys get me, you know. So yeah, and then also he teaches a lot, stop being a victim. There's a part that I want to talk about. Yeah, and then also he talks about how failure is relative. What I see failure as is not what you see failure as, and it's important to be accepting that failure is also part of growth. Usually people that are experts in certain things, they will tell you that at some point they failed, you know, for them to figure out how to not do certain things. So it's important that you're not avoiding of failure. But also, in as much as you're not avoiding of failure, you need to understand that when it happens, you need to recognize what you're being taught. You need to recognize why it's happening, what you can learn from it, and what you can get from it, right? And then he mentions how he grew up in a wealthy family, and there's something so beautiful that I loved. What he says, I was again fortunate because this taught me at an early age that making money by itself was a lousy metric for myself. You could make plenty of money and be miserable, just as you could be broke and be pretty happy. Therefore, why use money as a means to measure yourself worth? Instead, my value was something else. It was freedom. It was the autonomy of freedom. You know, also it's important that you don't use money or materialistic things to measure yourself. Like I said, it's important even when you set values like honesty, kindness, reliability, accountability, integrity. Those are the type of things that you want to set as values, because those are things that carry you for the rest of your life. Those are things that give you integrity. And when you have certain principles, you actually attract that money that you're trying to use to sort of measure yourself. But don't stoop so low and downgrade yourself just to mere dollars, currency that even goes down and up, and you know, anytime. You know, you can't do that to yourself. You are more than materialistic things, you know. Guys, this book was actually thoroughly amazing. Here's another one. I'm almost done. We're almost wrapping up. And then he says, if your metric for value, if your metric for the value, so you need to set up your values, right? So he says, if the metric for your values is success by worldly standards, is buy a house and a nice car, and you spend 20 years working your ass off to achieve it. Once it is achieved, the metric has nothing left to give you. The same thing that I was saying, Guti. If you tell yourself, I want to be a big YouTuber, once you become it, there's nothing left to it. So then he goes on, then you say hello to your midlife crisis, because the problem that drove your entire adult life was just taken away from you. There are no other opportunities to keep you growing and improving. Yet it's growth that generates happiness, not a long list of arbitrary achievements. In this sense, goals as they are conventionally defined, graduate from college, but guys, in this sense, goals as they are conventionally defined, they say graduate from college, buy a lake house, lose 15 pounds, are limited in the amount of happiness they can produce in our lives. Because in that moment, yes, you've lost enough weight, yes, you have that house, yes, you have that degree, but then what must happen thereafter? You know, and then he shares the story of Picasso. I love the story of Picasso that he shares. Picasso's an artist, right? And then he says Picasso remained prolific in his entire life because he lived Picasso remained prolific in his entire life. And just a side note, guys, I've been saying the word prolific everywhere, and it's our word of the year in our church. Prolific means spreading beyond measure. It means abundance. It means exceeding. And basically, that's what this year is about. And I know that there's a lot of downs and outs, but trust me, by the end of the year, you will realize that this is such a prolific year. So then Picasso remained prolific his entire life. He lived into his 90s and continued to produce art up until his final years. Had his metric been to become famous or make a buttload of money in the art world or paint 1,000 pictures, he would have stagnated at some point along the way. He would have been overcome by anxiety or self-doubt. He likely wouldn't have improved and innovated his craft in the way that he did decade after decade. The reason for Picasso's success is exactly the same reason why, as an old man, he was happy to scribble drawings on a napkin alone in a cafe. His underlying value was simple and humble, and it was endless. It was the value honest expression. And this is what made that napkin so valuable. And like I said earlier on, it's important that you're honest with yourself. It's important that you've got an understanding that, you're flawed. You will make mistakes. You don't have to be the biggest thing. You just have to be yourself. That is the beauty of it all. And then, okay, and then in chapter 8, okay, I can't go through it because I want you guys to buy this book, but also in chapter 8 and 9, he talks about the importance of being able to say no and the importance of relationships, right? I love this part where he was narrating his relationship with his wife, whereby he talks about their date nights. And then he says some days, actually most days, his wife is always looking beautiful, so she dresses up and puts on makeup and everything, and then before they leave, she says, how do I look? And then he says, most of the time she looks gorgeous, and I tell her, but sometimes she doesn't look as great, and I tell her. And then obviously it causes some sort of uncomfortability, right? And then he says, I can't imagine myself not being honest with a woman that I love, or somebody that I'm saying I'm spending the rest of my life with, right? And then he narrated how many other times boyfriends, girlfriends, or partners think they have to say things that we want to hear so that we love them more. But what they're not realizing is they're not able to experience us fully, or they're not able to see us grow and improve, because they're covering this relationship and this thing that I can't say no, I can't disappoint you, I can't be honest, and I loved it, because like he spoke a lot about being honest in a relationship, being able to say, no, I don't like this, no, I feel this, no, that doesn't look good on you, maybe try this. And also the receiver being able to receive it, understanding that I can trust that this person doesn't mean bad for me, they mean well for me, they want me to look better, they want me to do better, which is why they think I should tweak this up or change this or do this, man. And then he talks about his experience in Russia, when he talks about how people in Russia are very honest. And then he's like, it was so weird for him because people in Russia can easily be like, no, what you're saying is stupid, and in a very normal stunned face, compared to how people where he came from would have to be polite about certain things. They can't honestly express themselves because it's like, people are going to think I'm mean, and that's another thing, guys, being honest and being able to say things the way it doesn't take away from your identity. It doesn't take away from you being a good person or you being a nice person. Instead, it actually shows you how much you care for the next person. It shows you how much you want better for that next person, right? And then I thoroughly enjoyed it. And then he speaks of his trip in Cape Town. I mean, you know what? Of all those amazing books that I kept reading, I love how they all end up in Africa. Clearly, Africa is the best place to be in. The ending of the book, he ends up somewhere in Cape Town, and then also he talks about death, and he talks about how certain death is, and how it's important that we're accepting that death is going to happen anyway. And the moment you accept that death is going to happen anyway, you start living, because once you ignore death, or you think it's not going to happen, then you're going to have problems, because you walk around with this arrogant assumption that you have forever to live, you have forever to do the things that you would like to do, you have forever to be human being, and that time you don't. And by the time you die, when you're about to die, you ask yourself, what legacy have I left? What impact have I made? And you realize that you've done nothing, because you walked around so many years thinking you're never going to die, and you walked around so many years thinking that you have forever. Yes, you have eternity, but your body, your flesh is going to die. It is going to go back to where it came from, which is why it's important that you wake up every single day, you appreciate life for what it is, and you go for every dream, every aspiration. You do every single thing that you'd like to do. You know, you love hard, you love the people that you care for, you go for your dreams, go in all hard, you show up as your best self, and sometimes might not be your best self, but you show up when you need to. You do everything possible to experience humanity to its fullest potential or ability, so that by the time you go, you're not a bitter person. You understand that you lived, and you lived fully, and you did everything you could to actually experience life. Because many other times people were on their deathbed, they are bitter, or they're in so much pain, because it's like, I didn't love my children enough, I didn't love my loved ones enough, I didn't do everything I had to do, I didn't do this. Then you find people calling meetings when they're about to die, explaining themselves. At this age, you know, and whatever age that you're in, you have the ability to actually change that narrative. You are going to be ironing things out on your deathbed. No, you are supposed to be ironing things out right now. You're supposed to be living an honest life, a life of kindness, a life of compassionateness, a life of chasing your dreams, a life that is filled with love, mistakes, pain and tears and suffering, joy and peace. All of that, you are supposed to feel it, because you're human. The only difference between you and an animal is that you get to experience those feelings, those emotions. You get to imagine, you get to try out all of those things. And you know what, you are going to be afraid, but I mean, that's the thing, it ends there. You are afraid, but do it anyway. You know, like, this book just made me radical. Like, yeah. Everybody must read this book. Do not forget to be loved, do not forget to be light, and God bless you. I love you all.